Am I on now? Yeah, it said that my video had been removed for violating terms of service, so whatever that means. If it does that again, wow, there's a lot of you here. That's insane. If it does that again, I'm just going to maybe hold off and try again, because that did happen once when I was testing. I have no idea why. But all the same, there are quite a lot of you here. I can't actually see how many people are watching, but that's insane. Wow. Okay. So I suppose we'll go with it. I was in the middle of saying that some other anonymous YouTuber is streaming at the same time as me. I did actually just think if people wanted to see Vosh at the same time as me, we could go here. Oh no, I just took it down. Never mind. Oh, here we are. Someone sent me this, and I thought it was quite fun.
Go! Go! Ah, what? Stop! Yeah, the Loner Box video. Loner Box and Jangles both have a very strong future. You could just shoot the sentries. They didn't take damage last time I shot them. Oh. Never mind. Yeah, Xanderhall, I probably should. I'll do more of that. I spent like a week straight going through data and adding stuff to the dock, so I'm a little pooped. I'll do more of it soon.
But yeah, it goes on. There's a little bit of...
Put $1 million on Ben Shapiro!
Flagellation. Okay, whatever. Fun. So, let's go back to my old face. Right. So, I think if you notice in the description, this said, was it video autopsy, the African wheel. I think it was maybe because I mentioned Nick Fuentes that it took me down, because he's banned from YouTube. I took that one out and that seemed all right. So, no, Neve, you're not blocked. So the reason I called this video autopsy was because a little while back I made a video called "Why Didn't Africa Colonize Europe?" The gist of that was to answer basically what is essentially a racist question about why was Europe really advanced, and then compared to Africa. So when they went down, it was a very one-sided fight in the 18th and 17th, 17th, 18th, 19th century. Obviously, the first answer to that was racial superiority. We've since decided that racial superiority isn't really a thing as far as science goes. There's more genetic variation within race groups than there is between them. All other such things, obviously skulls and IQ and all that, it's all, well, as far as IQ goes, the best correlation for increases and decreases in IQ are education. If you introduce education systems to a nation, the IQ will go up by about 5 points every year. So, yeah, apparently Guns, Germs, and Steel, I actually hadn't heard of that book before I made the video, but having looked at it now, I know that it's not even referenced in my sources, but I know that it's just an argument that goes in circles, because obviously what I mentioned with Adam Smith in the Mediterranean is quite similar. However, the algorithm seemed to like it, but I think there were a few mistakes that I made in it. Mostly not big ones. I think whenever you make a video about history, the problem is people who are history fans are just the most pedantic motherfuckers you'll ever come across. A lot of it may be unnecessary, but yeah, you learn things as well, so not going to hold it against them. There were quite a few things that people mentioned that I had originally put in my video. The original script for that video was about maybe 10 or 15,000 words. It was a lot. The big thing that I would change, Ben, is that something I actually took out. I took out this whole big section on African empires because I kind of overrode that, because the idea was just to explain geography and why that creates differences. And I also wanted to emphasize the impact of agriculture. So the problem is there was agriculture all over Africa as well. And I did notice at one point in my video where I kind of if you were maybe just glancing at it, it might have sounded like I was just painting Africa as this kind of like hunter-gatherer tribal society. So I thought I would use this stream instead of making a part 2. The other reason I took this off, by the way, was I took this out of the original was because Satan Mad Pun. My first super chat. Bob, thank you. I hope you like the super chat theme. That's probably going to distract me. I might have to turn it down later. But yeah, I had included this big section about African empires and took it out because I saw that Satan Mad Pun had already made a video about it that was brilliant, and it had most of what I was saying anyway, so I didn't think there was much of a point. Also, because my computer is about 15 years old, and every time I edit more than half an hour of video, it collapses, and I've lost entire projects due to that. So I was going to do a part 2 as well, but then I thought, why not do it on stream? So that's what I'm going to go into now, if that's okay with everyone here, if you want to learn about African empires, and also actually why people tend to have this opinion that one thing I read in the comments as well was really recurring was this idea that original race theory happened, and I've heard leftists make this argument as well. Original race theory came from colonists arriving in Africa and being so shocked by the lack of progress that they came up with racism as an explanation, which is kind of weird. Yeah, you know, people saying things like, I don't know what the gist is there, that these very well-intentioned, curious explorers turned up and then they just saw a bunch of people listening to rap music and having their trousers down and decided it had to be in the bones. So what I'm going to show you is how it's actually the other way around, that there were lots of the colonizers came across a lot of advanced societies in Africa, and rather than incorporating that into the worldview of race theory, they sort of erased what they saw from history and physically, just so that they could keep race theory going. So, by the way, someone also mentioned, this was interesting, people mentioned that I was using the wrong projection of maps when I spoke about how it's easier for a European and Asian society to develop because you can go from Portugal all the way across to Shanghai, which is thousands of miles of trade and expansion. And if they invent gunpowder in China, you know, you can get a hold of that knowledge as it moves all the way across the Silk Road and down here. Whereas in Africa, most of the land is going this way. Obviously, this projection is kind of shit. Greenland is not that big. The problem with maps is maps lie. Globes are round, so when you make a map, what you end up doing in the case of this one is you stretch the top and you squish the middle. So maybe a more accurate one would be this, right? Big brain. There's Greenland, actually about how big it is. There are problems with this map as well, again, because it's flat. But obviously you can see Africa is quite a lot longer than it suggests here. Problem still is that doesn't really make a difference to the argument I was putting forward, because you still have an issue. Say if you're like the Malian Empire over here and you tried, wait, I'm not showing my own screen, am I? What an idiot. Okay, there we go. Yeah, this map, very shit, stretches the top, squishes the middle. This map, a bit better, accounts for size. Okay. I'm turning super chats down. That's amazing. Thank you, Neru. That's very nice of you. Right. There we go. So I'm only on one monitor as well, so I hope that doesn't get too jarring. So yeah, say if you're in the Malian Empire over here, then you're going to have to travel. Even if you want to travel this way, then you've got a huge rainforest in here. And if you want to go this way, you've got a desert. Over here, you've got a very stormy bit of sea. So you're still kind of stuck even there. If you're down here, same problem. Climate changes massively as you go north. Not very good for travel. Same here. The Malian Empire, they did travel even as far as Mecca sometimes because they were Muslim. So on pilgrimages, but that was why. They traveled because of for a pilgrimage, not for trade, because it wasn't practical for trade. So with that, someone saying, please don't become a generic YouTuber. Oh yeah, I forgot about my purple light, didn't I? There you go. Generic bread tube will rule. So I made a little image here, and this is what I'm going to talk about. So these three empires on this map will kind of show you. Each one of these has a very interesting story about how the extent to how whitewashed African progress is. So start with here. That's the greater city of Zimbabwe. This giant ring here. It existed for about 400 years between the 11th and 15th century. There was a lot of gold. They had cattle. They had crops. So pretty thriving society. The walls, I think, were 4 times the height of the Great Wall of China. There are some structures in there that, to this day, no one has any idea where they came from. They're just there and what they were used for. Now, if you've ever heard the theory that, you ever heard the idea that pyramids were probably built by aliens? You ever heard that? And then the idea that there's a very racial undertone in there because it links you to people who just couldn't fathom the idea of brown-skinned people building pyramids. This is actually, that's the origin of that theory came from here, it turns out, from Zimbabwe, because when the colonists arrived, the city had already been abandoned. And when the colonists arrived, they refused to believe that Africans had built it. They laid out all these theories. They said Arabs did it. They said that Portuguese people built it. They said Chinese people did it. And it wasn't accepted that Africans had built it until 1929, when archaeologists and historians just made it irrefutable. Until 1979, the authorities in Rhodesia, which is what was colonized area of Zimbabwe, still perpetuated the idea that black people didn't do it. Their prime minister, Ian Smith, actually published textbooks for the schools, and in the pictures of those textbooks were black people on their knees worshipping the white men who built the city. So, and as well as that, the ruins have been quite difficult to make much out of ever since, because the British curator of Rhodesia, who was appointed to preserve the city, destroyed half of the ruins, as well as a lot of the art and the evidence of why everything was, what some of the structures were built for. The reason he said he did that was because he wanted to remove filth and decadence from African history. So that's one example of why people might think that colonists encountered savages, was the colonists themselves just whitewashed what they saw. The second example, did someone give me $20? £20? Holy shit, what are they saying? I need to say what they're saying now. Is that, oh yeah, that's Nero. This is some excellent stuff, man. Kind of stuff is very easy to show people. Really excited for more content. Thank you. Very, very glad you like it. Okay, this next one, Mali. Look at that. That's really fucking cool. I like that. This is probably the most interesting one to me, because it's like Mali, this whole area here is very, very rich in resources. There's a lot of gold, there's a lot of salt, and there's a lot of things that they were able to trade across, mostly across to Egypt and South Europe. So this is actually as well where the so-called, actually no, I'll do that one later. The first one notable figure from here was in the 1300s, when an emperor called Abu Bakr II, who could have just lived a life of luxury and not really done anything special with his life, decided to abandon his comforts and go on a boat. He built a little boat and went this way and landed in South America. Alice, I'm stretched out because my monitor is a 29-inch. I owned a widescreen monitor before this one. So the only way to get it on stream is to squish it, and I haven't really found a way for the resolutions to work. Anyway, the boats that went to, he went to South America. Now, 1300, this person went to South America. What's wrong with that date? Didn't we normally attribute the discovery of South America to someone in 1492, Columbus? So 200 years roughly before Columbus, Malians were discovering South America. And before that, the South Americans were discovering South America. The other interesting figure about from this place was an emperor called Mansa Musa from the 14th century. He was often described in history as the richest man who ever lived. The amount of gold that he had was insane. Like historians have just said it's unfathomable. That's what you look at when they try to describe his wealth. Like every source will just say there's no explanation for, like, there's no way of measuring how much wealth this guy had. A celebrity rich list, it turns out, once guessed it was $400 billion. How they came to that is probably bullshit, but yeah, quite a lot. One good way to illustrate his wealth was he was on a pilgrimage once. He went all the way over to Egypt, visited there before going to Mecca. And he did the thing, if you've ever seen Aladdin, he did the thing where you sit in the litter and throw out gold into the streets. He just sat there, caked in gold himself, and just threw out bits of gold into the streets. He threw out so much gold to mostly poor people in the streets that it caused an inflation crisis, which lasted about 12 years. So imagine that much gold. This guy, not maybe a few hundred years after he died, European colonists originally failed to come in here. They tried and they were ambushed in the woods and they were all killed. But then after that, a bigger army came, and then obviously they had guns. The Malians did not. And the entire population was slaughtered, just about. And as well as that, I suppose in their anger, they destroyed all of the architecture, all of the art. Pretty much, yeah, they destroyed the entire city. So it's in ruins now, just about, apart from a few exceptions like this one. Some of that art did get preserved, and if you want to find it, you would get it in any British, American, or South American museum. No, not South American, British or, yeah, European or American museum. So, there's another one of how colonists themselves perpetuated their own theory by destroying evidence of civilization. The last one, this is the most interesting. Fuck that one. This one is the Kingdom of Aksum, which is kind of across Ethiopia and Somalia. These people warded off colonists all the way until Mussolini, who eventually took over the place. That obelisk there in the middle, the obelisk of Aksum, you can see that next to a person down there. That obelisk was stolen by the Italians. They pulled it down, took it away on a boat, and then reassembled it in Italy. They didn't return it until 2008, so it's back in Ethiopia now. The interesting thing about this place was, and I discovered this there's a video from Philosophy Tube on this, is where the African Enlightenment happened, which I had never heard of. I didn't know there was an African Enlightenment. And the dates in this are really important. So when you look at the Enlightenment in Africa, it was two guys. It was mainly a guy called Zira Yacob and his understudy Walter Haywat. They wrote a book called Hetata, which means inquiry. And in that text, there's quite a few things that, if you've studied philosophy, you might see are quite familiar. First of all, he wasn't tied to any religion, as far as I know. I think there was a bit of Christianity, a bit of Islam. They probably came into contact with Judaism as well. What he did, well, he believed in God, obviously. He used this was a development of Greek philosophy. He believed the Aristotle thing about how everything that exists is created by something else. Everything has a parent. So all those parents would have to have parents, and you just go further and further back until you can only resolve that problem by having something that created itself, which would be God. So that's his explanation. But as well as that, in Hetata, there's quite a few things that are very separate from religion. One thing that he said about religion was that, probably because he was coming into contact with so many different religious ideas, was that religions all have stories, and those stories are contradictory. And he said that although you should believe in God, he said that you should also criticize stories within religions. He called it miracles, like doubting and criticizing miracles. So, for example, he said that the European colonists were using religion to justify theft. Something like that. Is that another super chat? Cool. All right. I can't actually see it on my other screen. It seems to have frozen. Let's see. Is that something? Hey man, Maximilian Ball. Hey man, really enjoy your content so far and hope you keep it up. Good luck on your YouTube journey. See you up top soon. Thank you, Maximilian. That's very nice of you. 165 people watching. Holy shit! Fuck! Okay. African Enlightenment. This guy saying that religion, believing in God, but challenging the different ideas of miracles within religions. What's interesting about that is about 100 years later, it appeared in a book, in an essay from David Hume, the Scottish philosopher who specifically spoke about miracles. There's an essay on miracles, and if you do a philosophy course, that's where you'll learn about the criticism of miracles, although 100 years earlier, someone had already beaten him to it. There's a few elements of what he wrote in Kant as well. The most important one, I think, is in that book, Hatata, is a direct quote, is all men are equal in the presence of God, which he wrote in 1667. I guess normally you'd think of that coming from someone like John Locke or the Founding Fathers. John Locke didn't write that until about 10 years or 20 years after Jacob, and the Founding Fathers were 100 years later. One big difference between those three people who said all men are equal in the presence of God, only one of them included black people. Only one of them included slaves as men, because John Locke and the people who wrote the Declaration of Independence did not see slaves as men. So there's your improved, your upper level, high level idea version of all men are equal in the presence of God, coming at least 10 or 20 years before it arrived in Europe or America. And again, apparently this book, Hatata, is really hard to get a hold of. I think PhilosophyTube, when in his video, says that it had to come from, he had to get it from a professor, so quite interesting. So these three examples are just all either people actively destroying the evidence of civilization in pre-colonial Africa, as well as just maybe ignoring or taking credit for innovations that came from Africa before them. So there's your maybe slightly alternate explanation to they turned up and then they've just found a bunch of people in lowriders and decided that there was to have been something wrong with their brains. Which brings us to Mickey Mallory with the $5. Keep it up. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, let's look at... I'm so sorry I can't interact with the chat. I'll probably do that in a bit because after I've done with this little segment. So that brings us to this fellow. If you don't know who this is, don't worry. Your life is better for it. But another thing I kept on seeing in my comments was this opinion that sub-Saharan Africans didn't invent the wheel. There was an insane amount of people saying that. These people are kind of dumb as well, because YouTube automatically deletes comments that constitute hate speech. So I will see the comment about how they had low IQ and they didn't invent the wheel, and then it'll just disappear. But hundreds of these comments. I didn't know where it came from. I had a hunch that it came from Fuentes. Just had a guess. It turns out it is. Let's have a look at him saying that so I'm not taking anyone out of context.
I was like a free market guy. I remember watching Milton Friedman, and Milton Friedman said he was talking about the benefits of colonialism. And he said, in some parts of Africa, when we arrived there, they hadn't discovered the wheel yet.
Okay, so they hadn't discovered the wheel yet. Okay. Right. He said he got that from Milton Friedman. Let's have a look at that. Am I still? Yeah, okay. I think I know where this is as well. 180 watching, holy shit. Although it doesn't have the thumbnail, that's a bit shit. Okay, Milton Friedman, Africa. I thought I had this. Oh, I do. Here we are.
To put up police to keep a zero-sum game. People can benefit. Now, if you take the case of Africa, the wheel had not been invented in parts of Africa by the end of the 19th century.
Does anyone know anything about this guy? Does anyone know who he is? I'm sure maybe some people do. He doesn't get mentioned that often, although he's quite relevant in some ways, like the leftovers of what he did. Yeah, that's Milton Friedman. He was the economist professor from America who is mostly credited with this idea of modern liberal free market capitalism, neoliberal capitalism. The idea that capitalism works best when there's no regulation, privatize everything. If you're poor, it's your own fault, all that shit. Notice what he's doing here in this talk. This is quite interesting. Where's the beginning? Yeah, see this, yeah.
Most of these countries have severely...
Where's the image?
Just 2 more points.
So he's in a student campus, arguing with students. You know that aesthetic, that Ben Shapiro thing, where you validate your bullshit ideas by only ever talking to students with no media training and occasionally talk show hosts? That's nothing new. This guy, Friedman, was laughed out of academic circles all the way through the 60s and I think the 50s as well. He was a crank. And the thing about him was, though, his ideas worked very well if you were rich. Yeah, Isaac, he did talk about UBI. Maybe spam that to me a bit later because I might talk about that. Yeah, his ideas were very good if you were rich because he wanted to lower taxes. He basically wanted no taxes almost. And he wanted everything, education, everything apart from, I think, the military and the police to be privatized. There might have been one more thing. He said there were only 3 things that should be privatized. So very good if you're rich. So a lot of money was pumped into this guy. His ideas were first put into place not in America or Britain, but it was actually in Chile, which in a regime which was overseen by a military dictator who tortured and killed thousands of his opponents. That was where Milton Friedman's ideas were tested first. He hailed it as a great success. One of that guy, that dictator, General Pinochet, his policies was to take free school meals away from children. A policy which is popularly attributed to Margaret Thatcher. He did it first. So, and this guy, but he's still saying that the wheel had not been invented in what did he say again? To get the direct quote.
Well, but in a free market, I think if one man benefits, another must lose. But in a free market, both people had not been invented. The wheel had not been invented in parts of Africa by the end of the 19th.
The wheel had not been invented in parts of Africa. The wheel. Okay, so when he says some parts of Africa, what parts does he mean? Right? Does he mean the rainforest? Like the mountains? Where there's no point in the middle of the Sahara? You ever tried to take a wheel across sand? Can't do it. I looked really hard for this claim because it doesn't actually... I couldn't find much of it on the internet, apart from a few blog posts by random people. It's all over Poll, it turns out. I looked for it on 4chan, it exists there. I think what these guys did was took a claim and slightly reworded it. There. This is one, for example, just one. There's quite a few examples of people talking about this. There's almost in complete absence in the form of wheel transport. I might not see it now, but there's a bit in here where they just say it's not so much that they didn't invent it, it was that there was relatively little use. And that's a big difference. That's a difference between inventing something or not using it. Or and having it but not using it. So that got me a bit interested in how far that goes and what reasons there might be for that. Hang on, I'm going to go back to this other screen because you don't need to see my screen anymore. Cool. I will definitely get used to doing that properly. So first of all, something I don't know why I did this. There were so many people saying it, so many people saying that Africans didn't invent the wheel. So I just learned everything there is to know about wheels. First of all, it turns out wheels are quite underrated. They weren't invented until about 3,500 BC, so 7,000 years after the dawn of agriculture. They were invented first in Mesopotamia. They were quite bad. Apparently, most evidence is that they had wheels, but they still chose to use sledges instead. Then it was perfected in ancient Egypt. So Africans did the wheel. That's where it was properly perfected with the axle. And they used wheel chariots. So that was where the origin of it was. And it also turns out it definitely did also exist in East and West Africa. Definitely. The reasons they didn't use it, one clue I found was that in ancient Mexico, wheels were used, but only on toys. Like they had these little horses with wheels instead of feet. So again, because of the terrain, there's some terrain where it's not beneficial to use a wheel. I read a really interesting book. Well, I didn't read the whole book. I skimmed it, called Camels and the Wheel. And that's kind of where the answer is that wheels are very beneficial if you have draft animals like horses to pull carriages. If you have camels, which are better at carrying things on their backs than dragging, and obviously across sand, then you instead use what's called a camel saddle. You put a saddle on them, you put all your stuff on there, and that's how you move stuff. And that's it. Mesopotamia, which is where the wheel was invented, when the camel saddle was invented, they abandoned wheel technology for a while in place of camels. So, yeah, I hope that's maybe a slightly more satisfying explanation than that they couldn't invent the wheel. Could go for it. When the colonizers, when they arrived in West Africa, they brought carts and other wheel transport, but they didn't use it because, and there's actually in that book, Wheels and Camels and the Wheel, there's a little passage of a colonist describing his journey on a wheeled carriage, describing how he got stuck in the mud and it rained all over the place and the wheel eventually got like lunged into the soil and they got stuck in the woods because they tried to move using wheel technology. So the roads weren't good enough for wheel transport, and eventually they did build roads, but this took a very long time. It also incidentally took forced labor to do that, and that was done obviously with the indigenous people who were forced to build it by the locals, by the colonists. So that's your kind of cycle, is that the roads are not built for wheel technology, so you don't use wheels. And then because you're not using wheels, you don't build the roads for wheel technology. And it goes on. So that is basically complete bullshit told by a crank economist about 40 or 50 years ago, told in less than 3 seconds. And now it still lives strong in the brains of people like Nick Fuentes and Friedman. There's also a bit in that Fuentes video where he says there was no agriculture in Africa, so there you go. Tell you what I'm going to do. Holy shit. I've been on for what, half an hour? That feels so much longer, my god. Drizzle Brush with £10. Your content is phenomenal. Lonerbox binged it all soon after discovery. From a fellow Scot, keep up the quality work. Amazing. I like being validated as a Scot, even though my accent is the most un-Scottish Scottish accent. I have got, yeah, I do have more for this. How's everyone doing? I can see this chat is running 200 viewers. Fuck. Thoughts about Douglas Murray? He's a fucking asshole. What? Yeah, vodka. So, I hope that's a satisfying argument in case anyone brings up the wheel to you in a discussion about Africa. I do have, I was going to do a Q&A. I do have a list of questions. Thoughts on Ash Sarkar? Based? Yeah, fucking awesome. I was watching Ash Sarkar before the literally a communist thing. So I'm gonna look at one of the questions. So I hope, yeah, one of the questions I had for the Q&A was, what was the guy? Nelson Mandel, or Mandel, I think it's Mandel. Of course it is Nelson Mandel, of course. How did I miss that? Asked what prompted you to make the Why Didn't Africa Colonize Europe video? The reason was I saw a few people saying that I should do videos on race and IQ and 1350 and all that. It was because Stephen Crowder, amazing. Thank you for the £5. Found your channel recently. Love your videos. Keep up the good work. Awesome. So the reason I did that was because, first of all, I would like to maybe do something on 1350 or IQ, but it's all been done. You know, I'm not going to do anything as good as Sean on the bell curve, and I know that when the 1350 thing. Yeah, I know that the 1350 thing is just like, so many people have done that as well. Destiny's got a video on it, Xanderhal's got a video on it, Vosh has a video on it, so yeah. What I noticed that a lot of these people don't have videos on is origins, so just like the historical thing, and that's why I did that. I'm not really like massively interested in history, well, I am, but it's not like my specialty or anything. I just thought I would fill that gap, because when you're arguing with a racist, and you need to explain things like 1350 and crime rates and all that, it always goes backwards. You know, it's always this backstepping to well, why are they in poor communities, and then why Jim Crow, why slavery, like why didn't they enslave the whites, and then eventually you just end up way back into the origins of all racial disparity. And the answer to that is mostly, I would say, geography, and partially as well, it's not just geography, is cultural accidents. Protestant work ethic is a cultural accident that helped capitalism develop a lot more than... I would even say that Protestantism was more to do with the weather. Countries that went Protestant have much more are colder, and especially the ones in Europe, compared to the hotter ones like France and Spain that stayed Catholic. But that's just my opinion. I'm a sociology graduate. That's my degree. Yeah, more video. So I do have a new video coming out after this one. It's the script's already done, but it's I'm between cameras. My friend actually lent me a camera. Look, here it is. Big Chad cam. But the problem is I don't know how to use it. It also he gave it to me with no lens, no SD card, no battery. So I'm gonna have to get around that. But yeah, there's a script done, so there will be a new video soon enough once I know how to use cameras. But what's the best video you made in your opinion? That I don't know. Every time I, you know, when you're arguing with someone and then maybe like an hour later you think of all these things that you should have said. I get that with videos that I've spent months preparing and looking over. Like every time I upload a video, I'm just like, shit, I should have said all these things as well. Will this stream be uploaded to your channel? Yeah, definitely. Hopefully I know how to do that. I don't know. I just put this one up instantly because the other one fucked up. But, right, there's a few ways I could go now. I do have a second half to that Africa thing, because I think one other thing that happens is you have a gap, because if you give all those geographical explanations to what happened in between Africa and Europe, then the problem there is there's a gap, right? There's a gap between when the colonists left and today, say somewhere like Africa. So I suppose just maybe one example. Oh, experience living in a Muslim country. Yeah, I lived in Dubai for a little while. That's a city, not a country, but yeah, that's where I lived when I was a kid. Very briefly, but yeah, I've been there. So, right there. Sorry, there's so many questions, right? Yeah, I know the Malian journey was a theory. I know. Okay, fuck off. But the fact that it's a theory, maybe that's enough. In any case, if it's yeah, it's a theory, but the idea that Columbus discovered South America is also a theory, like, because it was already discovered by South Americans and obviously whoever else might have been there. So yeah, if you want to, I'm going to do another half of this actually as well. The other half I had was about Congo, because if you wanted an example of tracing the direct link between colonization and the disparities between the colonizers and the colonized and today, and the little gap where their colonizers supposedly didn't have any influence, because then you'll obviously hear people saying things like, you know, we tried to give them civilization, we gave them their railways and their, I don't know, the Enlightenment books and whatever shit, and they still fucked it up. Apparently, that's the story. So let's maybe do a direct link straight from colonization to the present day. A really perfect example of that is Congo. So just for 1 second, if anyone doesn't know where Congo is here. Massive bit of land here. Belgian Congo, by the way, not French Congo. Let's go back. So yeah, Leopold. So Congo is, in terms of resources, Congo is really interesting because it's the richest country in the world in terms of resources. I think estimates put it up to anything over like $1 or $2 trillion worth of resources untapped in Congo. It's very, very, very rich in minerals, gold, rubber, lots of useful things. I think it might have oil. That might not be true. So first of all, it's in the jungle. It was mostly, quite a lot of it is rainforest. There were a few empires in there, despite the fact that it's really hard to sustain agriculture in a rainforest because it's a rainforest. They probably didn't invent the wheel. We'll give them that one. I don't know. I don't see many carriages running around in the rainforest. Congo wasn't colonized, they were not as early as everywhere else. They were the last ones to be colonized. The wild animals would have scared off the colonists mostly, as well as the fact that it's a forest. It didn't fall until the late 1800s. That was when the Belgians eventually got a hold of the country. Because it's the late 1800s, this was post-abolition. So they couldn't go in there and enslave everyone, supposedly. King Leopold, who was the king of Belgium at the time, he went into Congo under the guise, he convinced the international community of the time that he was there to end slavery and to bring religion and modernity to the region. So white man's burden. That was his role, to go in there. When he got there, he decided that he was only going to build railways if they had forced labor. So instead of taking slaves, what they did was they kidnapped the families of Congolese men and forced the men to work for X amount of time in order to get their families back. So technically it's not slavery, but yeah, basically full-on coercion by kidnapping the families of Congolese men. The quotas he gave them were ridiculous. They were impossible to fulfill, so many people never saw their families at all. They just worked until they were dead. He started a private army, which was to deal with rebels, for which there were many. These armies included African locals who wanted to be on the winning side. That's really important. Hold on to that. He established child colonies, which was made up of mostly orphans who were taken in by and trained, sometimes trained to be soldiers, sometimes trained to be laborers. This was a particularly brutal time. They also introduced a lot of disease, not just because they came from Europe, but also because it was the first time that people were crammed into very dense spaces with livestock for the first time. So disease spread like mad and a lot of people died. I think the consensus is about 10 million. Yeah, you're right, Ron. About 10 million died. Anything between 1 and 15 million, but yeah, consensus is 10 million people, which is a lot. The population of Congo right now is about 80 million, so it's not a very massive population. So after these atrocities were uncovered, about 1909, 1910, King Leopold, badass unicorn, that's the guy I'm describing, he was, okay, so until he was forced to give up Congo, he owned Congo. It wasn't a Belgian colony, he owned the country. It was called the Free State of Congo, I think it was. But yeah, he owned it. He just owned the whole country. He was like property owner of a country. After those atrocities were uncovered, he had to rescind power, but it didn't go to Congo. It went to Belgium. It became a Belgian colony at that point. And it lasted that way until 1960s. From what I've read of African nationalist groups at the time and oppositional forces, was that they had this phrase called Belgian paternalism. That was apparently the attitude of the settlers. I think there might have been an attempted replacement. I know in Kenya there definitely was up until the 60s. That was a very, very big thing. Like, yeah, settler mentality. Google settler mentality. It's fucking insane. Those people are nuts. But so Congo only became independent until 1960 under a nationalist called Patrice Lumumba, a Pan-African nationalist. And the problem with this is a lot of what the Belgian states, the problem with giving independence to any colony is, firstly, the damage is done. Like, a lot of the wealth is extracted. I don't know the numbers for Congo, but I know for India, India's wealth accounted for about a third of all wealth in the world before it was colonized. About 30%. By the time the British Empire left, India's wealth was 3%. There is a person at my door. Hang on. Hello? Hi. Yeah, but, oh yeah. There you go. Thanks. I love you. Okay. Where the hell was I? Oh yeah, I was talking about, so first of all, the damage is done. A good example is India. Pre-colonization was about a third of the world's wealth. After the empire left, it was 3%. So very, very big difference there. With Congo, remember I mentioned that thing about the private army made up of fucking African soldiers as well as Belgians. That never went away. And when Patrice Lumumba came to power, his rule lasted about 3 months. Yeah, there was a mutiny from the African soldiers, as well as the military, as well as Belgian paratroopers who were still there. His rule lasted about 3 months, and then he was assassinated. After that, the country was taken over by a guy called Mobutu, who immediately banned oppositional parties, and the country just went straight back into dictatorship and civil war. So he stayed in power until the 90s. So we're the link between colonization and the present day is already quite established. He stayed in power until the 90s. He did, at several points, he was deposed at several points, and he came back. There was one point when he, what did he do? He made elections legal. He allowed elections in and said that he would allow political opposition to come back into the scene. But very shortly after he did that, he ordered the army to fire on student protesters, and about 150 people were killed. So, not a nice guy. When his opponent took power in 1994, the opposition parties were formally banned again, elections formally banned again. That guy was assassinated as well in the 2000s. There were coups in 2001, 2004. So, and then after that, the country just descended into, again, civil war. For about 10 years, Congo was completely stateless. It was run by warlords. So the country's basically been devastated, and it's all traced back to colonization. Like, there's no gaps in there where they were left with the railroads to, here's the ball, roll with it. Like, that didn't happen. And you can find similar stories. Like, there's a very similar story to this in Kenya and other parts of the world. When those warlords were in power, it was until about 2014 when they started to lose power, when they were found guilty of war crimes and things like that. But during that period where Congo was just under the control of warlords for about a decade, no one really knew about that, which is interesting because Congo in that period was going through probably the worst humanitarian disaster in modern history. Maybe excluding today would be Yemen and Syria, but yeah, Congo was up there. It was estimated that about 5 million people died of unnatural causes in those 10 years. The reason I think we didn't really ever hear much about that was because all of those warlords and all the forced child labor and human labor that they were utilizing was linked to American and European companies. So as far as capitalism goes, international capitalism, what was happening in Congo was effectively, it was fine. It was a success. They were making money. It was only in 2014 when a bunch of pressure groups forced the United States to pass a law that ensured companies like technology companies, especially, that they had to ensure where the parts of their goods came from, and diamond companies and things like that. They had to prove where it came from, and if it came from the warlords or the forced labor, then they weren't allowed to sell it. And there would also be criminal charges. If you want to know about a really, really nasty character in history, if that's your thing, I won't go over it now because it's not really massively relevant. But look up a warlord from Congo who's nicknamed the Terminator. That's if you want to learn about a real nasty bugger of a man. But there you go. These differences between the colonizers and the colonized can be very easily explained mostly by essentially spawn points and a few cultural accidents, things like that. And then the path from one country colonizing, one part of the world colonizing the other, can be traced over hundreds of years. The consequences of that can be traced over hundreds of years. So yeah, colonization is never really finished. Stop being racist? I don't know. Okay. That's all my prepared shit. How's everyone doing? I've been very purposefully avoiding the chat. What do I know about the Khmer Rouge, Janice Francis? Barely anything. I know that they were weaponized by Americans and British forces against the Cambodians. There's a fucking I don't know if you can notice, but there's a little Kermit dancing at my door. What are you gonna do, man? Okay, I think I need to look at super chats, don't I? If they exist, because I heard a few of them bouncing away in the background. Still, Cambodians. Still 200 people watching. Holy shit! Why is that loud? Okay. Okay. Right. The bad news is I'm a fucking idiot and I don't know how to look at the super chat history. Although I think I caught most of them. Hang on. I do have some Q&As to go over, so I'll probably do that. It's Jordan Beard. Okay. Oh, Toy Soldiers TV, how often are you going to upload videos to YouTube? I have no idea. Like, I was going for one every 2 weeks. That seemed quite sustainable. Now, especially since I'm not like full-time yet. Acoustic, okay, thank you. Right. So yeah, maybe 2 a week. I don't know if I'm going to become a streamer. Maybe that could be a thing. I've enjoyed this one. This has been fucking cool. Cosmic Omega, as I understand, it's the the agriculture is worse for the human body than hunter-gatherer. Yeah, in a way, like domestication of animals is not good for all kinds of reasons that we're learning the hard way right now. I don't know exactly what you mean by that, but yeah, there's kind of something there. Neve, what would get me going full time? I don't know, dollars. Yeah. No, I mean, I'm actually quite close to doing full time anyway, because I've kind of like, my other job is pretty low hours anyway. So, why'd you make the choice to start showing your face in video? Because I hate editing like every 5 seconds of a video, and I also didn't like that static background that I used to have, like just when I didn't have any images. I'm told that it's good to show your face. I think it's more personal, I suppose. I hate it. I'm very autistic, so I'll need to get used to that. I don't know if you've noticed me awkwardly reminding myself to look into the camera. What's your OnlyFans handle? Yeah, okay. Right, okay, saved questions. Let's look at those. What did people say? Giving some, was any dictatorship good? Probably not, apart from if I ever take power. Ashton Icebrenner, what is your method for researching and writing the essays you produce? Okay, I can answer that one. It'll take ages, maybe, if I'm not careful. Yeah, I don't really have much of a method. I tend to, there's kind of like a timeline. Like I'll do a bit of research, like I'll have a question, something to do with, for example, colonization, or how I can say something about a particular topic, do some research, find something that isn't already in 17 other YouTube videos. Definitely try to avoid falling into that. And then read as much as I can, take notes, make a kind of outline, look for flaws, do some research again, obviously research the other side that you sometimes get surprised, and then just edit it about 3 or 4 times. I'll always show, my girlfriend's really good at editing essays, so she'll always double check and make sure that I'm making the right points in the right places and delivering in the right way. She's quite good at that. So yeah, mostly reading, taking notes, and then fleshing out, sort of building a rough structure of argument, counter argument, blah blah blah, and then just kind of fixing everything in around that. Thoughts on veganism and vegans? Yeah, they're right, but I'm not one myself. Come at me. US could be considered an empire? Yeah, of course it is. It's a struggling empire, but it certainly is. Neve, how did you get into BreadTube? That's a good question. No joke, I'm not making this up. How I got into BreadTube, Michael Brooks. Yeah, there's a kind of chain. I actually remember the kind of, I could even like put an algorithm timeline for how I discovered BreadTube. Because I used to watch a lot of, I first started with when I was learning about Marxism in college. I would watch professors like Richard Wolff and David Harvey and people like that. And then did that for quite a few years. Came across a few other people as well, but that was mostly like lecturers, you know, Zizek and Chomsky, people like that. Eventually, I started getting recommended Jordan Peterson videos. Before BreadTube, I was recommended Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson. You can imagine. I was probably one of the few people who saw him on TV. I saw him doing the Kathy Newman interview on TV when I was visiting my mother. And I was really underwhelmed. I thought it was kind of dumb. She didn't do a good job with him, but still didn't really make anything of it. And then I eventually saw that he had gone viral, and then he kept on showing up in my recommendations. I was like, this guy's, he's not doing anything for me. I'm not like I get it. Like I was kind of, the impact he had on a few of my friends, I would probably say was kind of positive, but in a very narrow sense. But eventually I'd already watched a few of Majority Report. I'd watched Michael Brooks when he was interviewing Richard Wolff and other leftists, and he was actually the first interviewer I watched when he had a Richard Wolff on. I always thought interviewers had this thing where they would try to give their little monologue and the interview guest would just sit there and be like, all right, on you go, have your little bit. But then Michael Brooks was probably the first one, or one of the first ones, that I actually listened to what the interviewer was saying and really liked what they were saying as well. Like just as much as the guest. I was there for him as well as the guest. So I eventually watched him a bit more, and it was one interview he did particularly with ContraPoints. And then I watched ContraPoints' video Pronouns, the one about Ben Shapiro. And then that was me on the rabbit hole of BreadTube. That was about 1 year ago, about a year and a half ago. So yeah, rest in power, Michael Brooks. He was my introduction to BreadTube. What do you think about the statue toppling? That's a good question. Yeah, it's quite cool to watch. Like there's absolutely something aesthetic about that. Like just seeing a massive crowd of people like volunteering, like just doing that. You know, the statue Colston should have been taken down a very long time ago. Like that was ridiculous that he was up there, and they'd appealed to the council. They'd constantly tried to get it removed the proper way, and this council didn't do it. So of course, it's vandalism. It's not violence. Hey, okay. But I don't really like the discussion. The discussion being moved over to statues, that benefits the right. Doesn't benefit us. Like, if you noticed, Boris Johnson, especially in the UK, when people were talking about statues, people leapt onto that. They fucking jumped onto the conversation about statues because that's culture war. Culture war is where the right goes, because that's the only place they can really win. That they have a chance. They can't win on like the BLM argument, because the argument is correct. The studies support the idea that there's racial systemic bias in America overwhelmingly. So they move it to statues. When Boris Johnson did his big speech on the BLM protest, he didn't talk about BLM. He didn't speak about police brutality. He spoke about Churchill, because people had defaced Churchill's statue. He did a massive speech about Churchill, about how Churchill wasn't actually that bad, and he changed his mind later on in life and shit, you know? So yeah, that's Jeff Parker. What's your opinion on the Soviet Union? Not good at all. Yeah, that's my thought on statues. Thoughts on Orban? Isn't he like a fascist? Yeah. One of my real life friends lives in Hungary. He says it's a fucking nightmare. He said, yeah, like homophobic, hate crimes, transphobia, it's like, yeah, it's rife. And didn't Hungary, when the refugee crisis started, 99% there was a referendum on whether refugees should be allowed into the country. And they held this referendum. I think it was a bit contested. Most people abstained, but 99% of people voted against refugees being allowed into the country. 99%. Hungary is really, really weird. Like, really, I don't know. It's actually a really good argument with, like alt-righters will say this whole thing like, I used to be liberal, but then I witnessed the impact that illegal mass immigration was having on my country. I saw the white woman being attacked by the aggressive black men, and then I couldn't help but join the alt-right. No, like, that's what you notice about really far-right parts of Europe is the most far-right countries in Europe are the ones that don't have any immigrants. The most anti-refugee countries in Europe don't have any refugees, like Hungary. Hungarians don't know what they don't, like, with respect to Hungarians, they don't know what a refugee looks like. They've never seen a refugee. There are no refugees in Hungary. The countries that do have lots of refugees are places like maybe Sicily or Lesbos, and they are and the populations there are very pro-refugee. They're very solidaritist. They have a solidaritist approach to refugees. Yes, that is my girlfriend in the background. She's rummaging. Ben Smith, how did the British take over India, even though India was much bigger? Because they had guns. Scottish independence. Yep. I've been streaming for an hour now. How the hell do people do this for like 4 or 5 hours? That's insane. I feel like I've talked myself to death. Someone up there was asking thoughts on Orban. I got that. Thoughts on Deutschland? I don't know. It's fine. Do you like stuff? Are you a minimalist? You read Hariri? Oh, Hariri, the Lebanese guy. Loco X, hey. Hariri, who's Hariri? That's not the Lebanese guy, is it? He's saying it again. Why did Europeans have guns then? Because, get the fucking map up. Maps. Actually, you don't need the map for that. Gunpowder came from Asia. Again, this is just off the top of my head. I have to look into this. I would imagine Indians didn't have guns because they weren't at war. They weren't constantly at threat of invasion all the time. I don't know much about Indian history, but if you're in Europe, like, guns are. Once you get a hold of guns, like, they're good. You know, you're because Europe is plagued by civil war. Always has been. No, I don't know anything about Hariri, I'm afraid. United Ireland, probably. I'm sure there are other reasons. One other thing about agricultural development is places like Mali and I would imagine India as well, just because of where it is geographically, close to the equator, is if the soil is quite fertile and the area is very, very well stocked, then you don't need to go outwards that much. Like, people in Mali they didn't need to go that far. Whereas if you're in Europe, where it's a bit harsher climate, then the need to expand there's much more need to expand. So that's why guns. Thoughts on Count Dankula? Oh no. Oh shit. My fellow countrymen. Fuck's sake. My next video is about Count Dankula, so maybe just wait and see. I don't actually have that many thoughts on Count Dankula. He's the video I've done on him is just on one very particular video, which is quite old, which just, I think, tells me, is a pretty good illustration of what I think of him. I don't think Count Dankula really wanted to have anything to do with politics. That was an accident. He wanted to be a comedian, right? That was his thing. and he accidentally got arrested for hate crime, which is very stupid. My country really failed me on that. I don't know. He's probably kind of realized that a lot of his audience is owed to the political thing, like to the situation that he found himself in, right? So I think that's why he sticks to it. But I've seen him in political debates. He doesn't know anything. He has said so many like very incorrect and just like ignorant things about pretty basic shit. I'm pretty sure he once said something about like political correctness, and he was like that anti-free speech like legislation, hate crime legislation, is to stop race and bigotry. And then he kind of goes, oh yeah, that's what they did in North Korea and China. I'm like, no, they didn't suppress free speech in North Korea and China because of political correctness. Yeah, he says a lot of dumb shit. I think the politics is just something that he's accidentally landed in and has realized that he owes his audience to it. So poor guy, really. I think getting arrested for hate crime it's interesting, because I think getting arrested for hate crime is probably the best thing that ever happened to him. I'm talking about Dankula, sorry. I don't mind his Mad Lads videos though. They're okay. Do I have a philosophy degree? No, I don't have a philosophy degree. I've got a sociology degree. Free speech absolutism? No. You can't say fire in a theater. All right, let me see. God, you guys have so many questions. I'm dying here. I'm going to go to one that came from a patron because they deserve priority, I suppose. Sunny, I've noticed some of your videos have a focus on explaining the history behind a topic rather than just how human behavior influences said topic. Is history something you have a background in? Kind of. Not really. I did it for 2 years in college, first 2 years of college before going to university. I did want to do it in university, but I was advised to just go with one degree. And anyway, history is just like I could just have it as a kind of private interest. The reason I talk about history so much in my recent videos is just because I felt like it was a gap. It was a hole that needed to be plugged in. Dan Arrows is very good for like history, BreadTube. But I just thought there wasn't as much of that. There's lots of people talking about the science behind about like trans rights and stuff like that. So and plenty of people who talk about class. I'll probably branch out from that because that's definitely not the only thing I'm interested in. Ben Smith, I sound like Jesse Lee Peterson when I say, of course, yeah, it's deliberate. What was I saying? History. I was talking about history. Why there is, I think there's one kind of good optical thing about history is because right-wingers, this is also, my next video is a little bit about this, is right-wingers really like to talk about history, but in a very whitewashed kind of way, you know, like when that's why the statues kind of inflamed them so much, was because it was a very fucking like triumphalist sort of thing. There was a very emotional attachment. One thing that I found interesting was I did a video about how my hometown, which is Aberdeen, and how fascism was defeated here. And there's a very popular part of town just in the city centre, which is this town square, which is where most of the anti-fascist activity happened. It was where all the socialists and communists would gather up. And when the fascists tried to use it as a place as a forum for them, the communists chased them out. So historically, this part of town, in my hometown, was basically like Red Central in the 30s and 40s. It's always been a forum of like soapboxes and people giving speeches, and just like ordinary people giving speeches about politics and communism and stuff like that. So yeah, I was really baffled to find out that the wankers who were protecting the statues chose to protect the market stands. The historically left-wing space was getting defended by a bunch of skinheads and racists. So I just thought, Aberdeen, Hurst, Ewald. So I think what's kind of useful in, especially arguing with right-wingers, is I think it's quite that's a good way of kind of earning like a foot in the door. Like they kind of you kind of get their respect a bit more, and they'll listen to you if you can demonstrate that you actually know their history better than they do. That's maybe why I'm very interested to why I like to go into the history of things. Am I a vegan? No. I've already answered that, but vegans are right. Are you a communist? And if so, what tendency? Yeah, big old communist. Worker co-ops, all that shit. I don't exactly know where I stand on the state. When anarchists say they're anti-state, I sometimes get a bit confused about whether they're talking about the whether you're talking about the state in terms of taxation, or in terms of the military complex, or in terms of sewage. You know, the state does a lot of things. The state gives me clean water in Scotland. So, and I do think, as well as self-determination in the economy, like with co-ops and all that, I think there is also, you'd maybe have a bit of an issue with, say if one co-op or one region finds themselves strikes oil or strikes shale gas. How would you stop that? I think as far as climate change goes, then states are quite necessary to make sure that carbon emissions are being checked, and to make sure that we're not going over that threshold. That might even be like at a global level, not global government, definitely not, but like a UN style sort of thing. Yeah, definitely. So I'm kind of between that. I'm mostly anti-state, but yeah, there are definitely areas where it's quite nice to have it. So that hopefully I've answered why I use history. Someone's asking me if I think Nick Fuentes is racist. Nick Fuentes, I had to edit a clip of Nick Fuentes in one of my videos of him just sitting there going, "Oh, race, man, race. You can't get around race. Oh, all these culture people. Oh, it's just the culture. Nah, man, no way. It's race." I just thought like that was so funny. Like he's so funny. Like if he wasn't such a fucking Nazi, like I would enjoy Nick Fuentes. Like he's definitely got potential as a kind of like silly clown person, but no, especially when that stuff that he says about Africa having no agriculture and being really backwards and all that, and it has to be because of IQ and genetics. Nick Fuentes doesn't believe that. I don't think he genuinely does. The reason I think he doesn't believe that is because I've seen him admit it. I've seen him on a stream. I watched this video of him. I'd love to find it. It was him talking to a call-in. He had a caller who was telling him, who was talking to him about the geographical arguments about how history has not always been dominated by one racial group. It switches. Mali was much, much richer than Europe at the time of the Malian Empire. At that time where that guy was dishing out enough gold to crash an entire economy in Mali, Europe was in the Dark Ages, civil wars. They were shit. So, and I watched a caller give all these arguments to Nick Fuentes, saying that racial superiority isn't consistent. Like it ignores the factor which is time. It ignores Golden Age of Islam. It ignores the Malian Empire in comparison to the Dark Ages. And Fuentes basically just said, he just kind of goes, yeah, but I just think of it in a more practical sense. Let's look at how they are now and coming here. So yeah, just move the goalposts. So why does Fuentes have black fans? I don't know, because black people can be racist. Trans people can be transphobic, yeah. It's perfectly possible. I'd love to know how much of a proportion of his fans are black. That would be interesting. That'd be a better question, Ghost Frog. Are you a Fuentes fan, Ghost Frog? Is that why you're here? Neve, you're asking a Fife yes or no. What, as in like, do I agree with the concept of Fife? My mum hates people from Fife for some reason. I have no idea why. I think there's a bit of a tension there between Aberdonian farmers and people from Fife. Okay, just asking. Cool. It's just as well. I was I kept worrying there'd be some really contentious bugger in the. I'm sorry, Drizzlebush. I know she's old. What can you do? Yeah. Will I get a better camera? I have a better camera. Look at it. I just don't know how to use it, and it doesn't have a lens. And the lens is for some reason taking a while to arrive. I ordered it last week. So yes, I will get a better camera. But for now, you can deal with all this. I had one more question, didn't I? Super Scott, amazing. Asking, how long on average does it take for you to make a video? Takes about 2 weeks, I would say. Mostly I would say 2 weeks. The Grooming Gangs one, that took a month. That took so long to pull together. But yeah, I tried to give myself 2 weeks, which is usually 3 or 4 days of reading stuff, taking notes. About 3 or 4 days of putting the essay together, editing, coming back to it. And then the rest of it just filming and editing. The editing takes ages. It takes a very long time. Do I invest in anything? Have you seen my microphone, that board guy? My microphone's quite good because before I did this, I was a music producer. So my house is full of investments. Yeah. I'm a communist businessman, don't worry. So, what was that question, Super Scott? Yeah, how long on average? That's how long on average. Thoughts on debating other political YouTubers? Yeah, why not? If you can carry yourself. Yeah. I think I don't know if I'll do it. I might be okay. Yeah. We'll see. I'll definitely eventually get into it, especially while I've got like a smaller following, because I can't get accused of platforming racists and shit. I do get a bit jarred when I see leftists aggressively debating each other. I'll make an exception for tankies. You can debate tankies all you want. But I think especially there was that kind of Destiny era where he was just debating leftists, and it did kind of like, I suppose it maybe exposed a few people on the left for not being that good at defending their positions. But I don't know. I also noticed that the audience kind of switched off on that period as well. It just wasn't that interesting. Strong arguments against communism, there are none. No, there probably are, bro. There probably are arguments. Many. What kind of music do I listen to myself? No, I big Beatles fan. I like Tame Impala as well. They're quite good. Mostly 70s stuff, but quite a bit of classical too. Revolutionary Catalonia. Yeah, I'd love to know what's happening there right now. I think last time I checked, Catalans were getting assaulted by the police for trying to vote. Thoughts on Vosh? Yeah, he's pretty cool. I like him. Were you thinking of getting to politics? Yeah, because although I spent a very long time doing music and got quite fairly successful with it, I produced a song that got like 10 million views on YouTube. That was quite cool. But I always it was just eventually noticed that I preferred politics. Like it was just more of a thing to me. And because there's more of an audience on YouTube for politics than there is for YouTube. No, there's more of an audience on YouTube for politics than there is for music. At least it's easier to grow an audience. At least I noticed. Yeah, I love Pink Floyd. Amazing. Although Roger Waters has been a bit cringe lately. He went on Tucker Carlson. Not cool. Fucking weird. Thoughts of UBI? Not on its own. Definitely not. Because like if you have UBI and how do I put this quickly? UBI fucking, if you have it on its own, then everyone gets what, $1,000 or $1,500 a month. Then the landlord knows that, they put the rent up. Like UBI comes from the right wing for a reason. It's because consumerism, and because we've had a demand problem in this country in most of Europe and America for about 40 or 50 years. So I don't really know how to make UBI work. I know like a lot of these policies, same as like rent control and all that, is like you need things to go with them. Like if you had UBI, you'd probably need rent control. You couldn't have UBI coming in and then everyone's rent goes up by $1,000. Fuck that. Also, you can't have rent control without a very strong social housing program, because otherwise that disincentivizes people from building houses and makes it harder, obviously, to get a house. So yeah, I'm not really massive, like, I don't know, I'm a bit too what would you call it, floaty to have like very strong opinions on like specific policies. But yeah, things like those need to be taken with a pinch of salt. Like you couldn't just like, that's why Yang fell apart for a number of reasons, but just saying UBI, all else remaining equal, is ridiculous. Yeah, I know Vosh shouted me out. He shouts me out quite a lot. Like every time I'm in his chat, he'll like tell people to, I think if you go into Vosh's chat and you put !loner, the machine will link my video. So and I was making videos for about a year, and then it was about maybe only 2 months ago when I posted when I emailed a video to Vosh, just because I saw him debating grooming gangs with Sargon, or he wasn't debating that, but it came up. Vosh didn't have much of an answer for it, so I thought maybe this will help. He watched it, he tweeted it, I got some views, then Thought Slime shared it in his video as well. Vosh and Thought Slime. I'm told they don't get along, but you know, maybe they can become friends over a mutual loving for me. So yeah, I know Vosh shouted me out. Why Fife? I don't know. Good question, right? Oh god. Whoa, this is amazing. I like doing this. Thoughts on Trump? Not good. The orange man is bad. Why loner? What, like why the name? That's a good question. I don't know. I did think originally, why did I think that? I really like, there's an album I really like called Lonerism. Probably came from that. As well as, I think it was maybe a play on words on like YouTube. YouTube, like tube meaning TV, and I always kind of consider like computers and TVs to be kind of like a lonely person thing, like loner box. So maybe something you do on your own. Also that I don't like people that much. I like loner as a badge of pride. Talk about that purple color. It's a light. It's a birthday present from my girlfriend. It's not actually that powerful, but when I put it up here, it looks like I've got fucking, like I'm being radiated. Probably going to run out of charge quite soon. Thoughts on David Pacman? He's, I suppose he's adorable, but he says some dumb shit sometimes. His take on Bolivia, that really annoyed me. But mostly, yeah, I watch David Pacman. He's good. Did I just contradict myself there? Probably. Thoughts on the feds in Portland? Holy shit, I don't know, man. Like, I really wanted to... I at one point wanted to live in Portland. I was told good things about it. But, I mean, especially when... I mean, that's like a hotspot for the Proud Boys and their... disappearing people. See, this is why I don't do current events. I don't really like formulate that many thoughts, but it's really fucking... If you're in Portland right now, just fucking leave. Or, I've heard this mentioned before, like Britain had a very good response to this, and they should have, maybe Portland could benefit from it, is it's hard to tell how ideological people like the Proud Boys and the people in Portland really are. A lot of the time, I know in the UK, a lot of these movements defending statues, it was organized by football hooligans. They don't give a fuck about the politics. They wanted to fight. That's why they were there. They wanted to come out, get drunk, and fight people. So when they went up to London to defend the Churchill statue, the BLM protesters called their event off. They didn't turn up, and then the consequence was that the the nationalists and the people defending the statues ended up fighting the police and Sieg Heiling in front of the Churchill statue, which is amazing. Yeah, they look fucking stupid. So maybe practically, if you're in Portland, I don't know, keep your head down. I really hope you're okay. Thoughts on Poland? Are they still pretty fascist? I don't know. Kaczynski, it's his party who's in charge in Poland. Fuck, I got an email from a Polish YouTuber who does videos in Polish. He was telling me that yeah, that this whole Polish thing is like really what was I going to say? Really understated, because I know the Polish regime they've been supported by the Tories in the UK, even though they are like hate crimes I think are through the roof. There was a gay pride parade where a bunch of people got assaulted. I mean, that's quite common in Eastern Europe. I know Polish is technically Central Europe, but yeah, there was a really interesting take I got from Zizek on Poland, which was a really good optical thing for the left would be the value of manners, which is a really strange suggestion. But what he basically said was that conservatives used to pride themselves on their decorum, you know, their civility and their manners. That's something they're not really doing anymore. Like clearly the Proud Boys, Portland, they don't really give a fuck about that. A really good example with Kaczynski was that when he came to power, he was interviewed and asked about what his plan was. He said something like, it's our turn to fuck the whore. That was his take. So yeah, not a very conservative in the classical sense, I would say. One thing that we can probably, I don't know how much this is being played up by the right, but what I did hear about Poland, which is kind of distressing, I think it says a lot about the kind of liberal center left than anything else, is this thing that the left often gets accused of sidestepping class for identity politics. You know, that old bullshit, which is very, very, I don't know, false, because they said, like, it was even said about the Labour Party, even though under Jeremy Corbyn, even though the Labour manifesto was probably the most pro-working class manifesto in this country for decades, they were still played up as this kind of pro-trans, pro-black and everything, but anti-working class, which is basically, that's when it's code for white. But one thing that fascists will do is that they will adopt left-wing policy or rhetoric to sidestep liberals. So I think in Poland, one thing that they've done is they've massively expanded the healthcare system. You'd really need to look me up on that one. It might be overplayed, but I really don't like this whole thing of like allowing the right to hijack left-wing politics in that way. But I suppose you can probably blame liberals for that more than the left, because the left obviously talks about class quite a lot. Tell you what I'm going to do is, because I've been chugging, I'm going to go for a bathroom break. And if I come back, I might still speak about things, or I will go. So in the meantime, talk amongst yourselves. I'll be back in a moment. Fife is for life. Amazing. Someone asked me if I'm a gamer. Yeah, I was a fucking, when I was a teenager, I was a fucking World of Warcraft addict when I was a teenager. Like, insane. I would play like 12 hours a day on school nights. It was mad. That's how I discovered Pole. I discovered Pole in 2006. That's how long they've been, that's how long that, yes, I wash my hands. That's how long they've been spreading race theory to teenagers. Luckily, it never really worked on me because I'm not a fucking idiot. Apparently, there are more questions in the Discord. Have you... Whoa, why am I slow? Have you heard of the veil of ignorance? I feel like it was a more common thought. Maybe people would... Oh, sorry, not Vince is asking. Have you heard of the veil of ignorance? I feel like it was a more common thought. Maybe people would be more open to new ideas. I don't know what the... No, I don't know what the veil of ignorance is. Although I'd love to learn about it. Send me an email. But yeah, what do I play now? Now I still play WoW Classic sometimes, and I also I'm not much of a gamer. For a while I liked what's the fucking game when you're a car and you're kicking a football? What's that game? Anyone? Rocket League. That's the one. Rocket League. I used to play a lot of that. I'm also a big fan of Mega Drive emulators because I'm a boomer. I think that was probably the... yeah, Rocket League. Oh, shit. Maybe I've noticed that the chat is very delayed. Maybe I will turn this off to help with that. Okay. I've been thoughts on Scottish independence. Yeah, absolutely. Of course. Yeah. Like, I think that's quite confusing to some people because I imagine if you're not from Scotland or Catalonia or any of these places, obviously nationalism just stinks of right wing, you know, when you hear it. And that is kind of true to an extent with the Scottish nationalists, like it exists, but there's a big difference. Okay, this is a bit. There's a big difference between different kinds of nationalism. There is triumphalist nationalism. I'm just inventing these, but I'm sure that I've read something similar. There's triumphant nationalism and there's emancipatory nationalism. Those are two different things. And so the nationalism of someone like the British Empire or America is very different from the nationalism of somewhere like Congo, for example, or Cuba. Cuba, Fidel Castro and Che Guevara were not communists right away. Their movement was a nationalist movement. It was that Cuba was being used as a vassal state for America, and its resources were being used for American benefits. And that's why nationalization. A lot of the South American movements were like that. It started with nationalism way before it started with before it became a left-wing thing. Cuba, I think, as far as I remember, became a left-wing project because their only possible allies at the time were the Soviet Union. So it was a nationalist movement before that. So I think, to an extent, you do kind of, at least in terms of Scotland, you kind of need, Scotland is a perfect example of why you need a bit of nationalism before you can have internationalism. Because if Scotland doesn't have independence, that's one more group being carried out of the EU, for example. I don't like the EU particularly, but it's definitely more internationalist than the alternative. Tommy Ogbaro with £1.99. Thoughts on the current liberal purge of Labour? Labour are fucking garbage. Like, I'm still a member. If you are a member, you should still be. They need the left to win. But yeah, what they're doing right now is absolutely ridiculous. I don't really see why especially, I don't know if you saw when Keir Starmer got rid of Rebecca Long Bailey, who was kind of like the most high-profile left-wing person in the party because she shared that article, which I'm going to say was not anti-Semitic. There was one sentence in there which you could call a red flag, but the broader context of that article was her telling people who were on the left to stay in the Labour Party. It was insane, and he just obviously was using that as an excuse for a purge, like 100%. It was an excuse. The problem with the right wing of the Labour Party is they understand the working class of the UK less than the Tories do. The Tories know the working class better than people like Keir Starmer do. And the right wing of the Labour Party, I think they are partially to blame for the fact that, well, especially during Tony Blair, they used to have this, they have this real image of what the working class of Britain is like. They have this image of the average Brit who is below us, who is not metropolitan, who is not cosmopolitan, who is just kind of stupid and uneducated. And they always feel like they need to talk down to the population and tap into this kind of like average person. A really good example of this is there's a sketch in a sitcom called The Thick of It, when this MP gets in trouble for... they have a focus group, and this MP decides to single out one woman in the focus group because she's saying all the right things. So they take her for a separate session and just use her opinion for everything. It turns out that she's an actress who's been put there. So it's like a fuck up, and his excuse for that fuck up is we took her on because she is Middle England. To which the main character says, so Middle England is just a big giant field with one woman standing in it. And that's the joke. But that is the mentality of the right wing of the Labour Party. They don't know whose votes they're trying to win. That's why they've that's probably, I would say that's my opinion on why they've never had a female leader, because they don't think it would fly. And that leaves a massive gap for the Tories to say, look how diverse our cabinet is. They can bring in a bunch of people of Pakistani or Indian origin into their cabinet, or black people into their cabinet, and say that the Tories are more accepting than Labour. To an extent, they're right, because the right wing of the Labour Party is really, really bad at that. Because they think that they're going to lose voters if they have a female leader. Or, tell you what, I've heard this prediction being made, and I completely agree with it. The Tories will have a black leader before Labour does. There, that's my prediction. Yeah, they remember that Blair won elections, but he lost the trust of a generation. Yeah, because Labour's vote share decreased every election since 1997 until 2017 when Corbyn increased it again. So that's pretty... And he effectively won elections by becoming a Tory. People don't really realize the extent to which Tony Blair did that. Like, he started as... In the leadership, I think in the leadership conference, when he was trying to become leader in the elections, in 1994, all the Labour candidates are asked this question, are you a socialist? And Tony Blair's answer, he didn't just say yes. He said, yes, I am a socialist. I believe in I follow or I believe the works of Marx and Engels. He said, my politics is shaped by Marx and Engels. Like, he deliberately said that. But the first thing he did when he became leader was he flew to Australia to tell Rupert Murdoch, who owns all the right-wing newspapers in the UK, just about all of them, also owns Fox News, to basically assure Murdoch that everything was fine, that he was going to follow that line. Margaret Thatcher asked in an interview, she was asked in an interview, what was your greatest achievement? And she said New Labour. She said Tony Blair was her greatest achievement. So that whole thing in sort of 2008, 2009, 2010, when the Tories blamed Labour for the recession, pretty much every single budget that the New Labour pushed through was backed by the Tories. They were the Tory party, apart from that they cared a little bit, you know? I don't know if you can hear me tapping my pen ritualistically. That bored guy, I must go now. Yeah, okay, have a good one. I hope you enjoyed yourself. There are still 160 people watching. Fuck's sake. I thought like I'd maybe get 50 if I was lucky. I thought over 100 and I would maybe have a panic attack, but I haven't, so I'm okay. Yeah, I'm not gonna Funk. Sorry, I can't pronounce your first name, but yeah, the last time a party won an election without being backed by Murdoch, never. I don't think. Well, since the 70s, right? People always have this idea that when people talk about the left as being kind of like this all-powerful monolith, the left hasn't won an election in the UK since 1974. That's the line I would give. You know, since Harold Wilson, like there hasn't been a left-wing government in the UK since 1974. Congrats on not panicking. Amazing. Why do you believe in Islam? I'm not a Muslim. But yes, I've been streaming for 1 hour and 50. I think I've maybe run out of questions. Let me check Discord. I wish I had a better answer for your veil of ignorance, not Vince. Oh, TERFs. Why are there so many TERFs in the UK? Interesting stat. I don't remember the exact number. It's between 50 and 60% of people in the UK when polled, this was YouGov, support trans identification. They agree that trans women are women and trans men are men. That's not reflected in our media at all. The Guardian doesn't believe that, you know, to quite a great extent. I would love to know that actually. I think maybe Sean did a video on this a really long time ago about why the UK is so turfy, because we're not. Like, the people aren't, it's the media that is. And why we export so much transphobia. I wonder if it might just be because British media is fairly monopolized. The BBC have been influenced by Tory governments for a very, very, very long time. I don't really have a very satisfying, apart from maybe, the thing with America is America doesn't have a BBC, but what they do have is a system where it's very easy for small alternative left-wing groups like Democracy Now! And Young Turks and all that, to sort of buy their way into the scene. And that doesn't really exist in the UK, which is why those kind of fringe arguments don't really make their way into the UK. We've got like, what, Novara Media? And they're not on TV as far as I know, they're just on YouTube. If you want British media, by the way, for anyone who's not from this shithole of an island, look up Novara Media. If you want to get like British media that isn't complete shit, then get it from them. Thoughts on the SNP? I don't know if that's going to be I have lots of thoughts on the SNP. I don't know if that's going to be very interesting for everyone who's not Scottish. I've voted for them basically every time. We'll leave it at that. Why are you left and not right? Because left is best. Rest in power, Michael Brooks. What's your YouTube follower demographic? They're like 80% male. I think I've been told that's quite normal. Age, they're what, 18 to 36. Thoughts on Portugal? I have no idea what's going on in Portugal, apart from that they decriminalized all the drugs and it's good. I didn't actually mean to. No, I was calling the island. Yeah, that's Scotland's based. England, I don't know. There's something going on there. What's the music scene like? Oh, what do I do as my regular job? I'm a music teacher. I mostly privately, but what I also do is I don't know if you've ever been in school and like maybe once a year this like weird guy will come into the school and teach you about drums and guitars and shit. That was me. I used to do that. I actually taught in one of the, I think at the time it was probably, I think it was the lowest performing school in the entire country. And I taught kids who were kind of struggling with, who were just like underachievers or people who had issues. They would get to, it was like a kind of social care thing where I would go into the school and teach music to these kids from troubled backgrounds, very, very troubled backgrounds. It was really good. It was really cool. They were just as talented as the private school kids I would teach at home. Only when they all turn 18, only one of them features on the local scene. I wonder why. My favorite chord is C major 7, obviously. I play pretty much, well, drums, guitar, piano, bass. Like, yeah, play quite a lot of instruments. Is Wagner problematic? Well, he's a fascist, yeah. Favorite Beatles album? Magical Mystery Tour, 100%. Although I don't take psychedelics. Not that much. Not a fan of them, really. Okay. Jazzy. Yeah, no, I don't know. Like, C major 7's not, it's like, it's more of the kind of emotional resonance it has. I do like it in jazz as well, but yeah. I also, I like add nines. Any minor with a ninth on it is beautiful. This is content for about 3 people in the audience. What's the most fascist instrument? Probably electric guitar, right? Although I do play electric guitar, it's incredibly fucking like Led Zeppelin, right? Yeah, I like Bob Dylan. I like fucking lots of music questions. Holy shit. Love Bob Dylan, love Neil Young. Cool, C major 7. Thoughts on drugs, not just decriminalization, but I had an argument about this not long ago. Yeah, I think obviously legalization, the problem it's having right now, I guess, is that it's being legalized and then being completely appropriated by like rich white people who are starting businesses, and that's like, and whilst the black people and poor people in America are still getting criminalized for doing the exact same thing. So I think legalization, I don't know, I'd need to, like I said, there's not been research. I mean, I'm for it as an idea, like it's your body, you should do what you want with it. If you're over 18, presumably. King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, yeah, I almost saw them live. They're really, really cool. I completely forgot what the first question was, but yeah, the decriminalization is absolutely seems to be working. One really interesting thing I learned about the war on drugs is like the war on drugs, the whole making it illegal in the first place is such a, it's like, it's always been like fucked. So there was, I wish I could remember the name. There was something I read not long ago about someone who was an advisor to Nixon during the sort of birth of the war on drugs. It was admitted by Nixon's advisors that the whole point of the war on drugs wasn't about keeping people safe. It was about, the war on drugs was started because, partially because it played this role of consolidating this kind of criminalized image of black people, civil rights movement basically, and the anti-war movement. Criminalization of drugs was basically a way, the war on drugs was basically just a way to criminalize people who were against the Vietnam War and civil rights protesters. That's why John Lennon got arrested for having enough weed to roll like 2 joints. That's why John Sinclair spent 10 years for having, what, 2 grams of marijuana? Yeah, that guy, John Eckerlichman, yeah, that fucking guy, yeah. Yeah, that's been openly admitted to, yeah. That the whole purpose of war on drugs was political. It wasn't practical, obviously, because criminalization, and I was actually told by a lawyer a very long time ago, not that this is legal advice, that, how would it be, that 80% of crimes in the UK are drug related. So you solve the drug problem, you've solved 80% of crime. Ableton gang, no, I'm a Pro Tools boomer. Yeah. I think because I'm a teacher, I don't have to pay as much for it, but so I can appreciate the Ableton. I used to use Ableton when I played live. When I had the keyboards and the plugins, I would have Ableton on the side. Although actually Ableton would crash. And there is someone dancing behind me in the amazing. I'm not cutting my hair, she's cutting my hair. Oh, that's a really good question. Who'd have thought? How do you get away from discrimination, evil, alt-right wing as a Muslim? You know what's really interesting about, like, everyone who's thought about this knows that Muslims and, well, radical Muslims and the right wing are not that different. They believe a lot of the same things. They're very misogynistic. They're very skeptical of interracial anything. So, yeah, I read a book about this not very long ago, which was about online Muslim culture in the UK, the world of online Muslims. And it's really fascinating about how little of that transfers into this, because a lot, like, they speak English, they're British Muslims, but they never really find their way into communities like this. And I think there's a very good reason for that, is because there's a reason there's no Muslim bread tubers. Like, there are lots of Muslim left-wingers, they are massively a thing. They don't come onto BreadTube because they will get slaughtered by Twitter and talk about cancel culture, right? I do know one ex-Muslim YouTuber called Aina. She's really good. She does podcasts talking about Islam from an ex-Muslim's perspective, but also very respectful towards the religion that she left. You know who's really popular, or who has recently been getting really popular in Pakistan amongst Muslim conservatives, is Jordan Peterson. He has got a following of probably quite traditional, possibly quite misogynistic men in Pakistan, not because of the Muslim thing. I read an interview with one person who was trying to justify his liking for Jordan Peterson, and it was just basically he said something like, he said, oh yeah, you know, he doesn't really get the Muslim stuff. He doesn't know enough, but I like his ideas on traditional life. He just needs to get whatever Muslim pilled, and he'll get it that we're not so different. So yeah, that was yeah. There's not much of a difference there, and you know, there is quite a lot of like dissidence within the Muslim world, especially from feminists or anti-capitalists or trans rights activists. The only problem is we don't hear about them because the states that are suppressing them are funded by the liberal West. So a really good argument that, well, would have been useful for the 2019 election, especially with all the anti-Islam rhetoric coming out of the Tories, was that only one prime minister in recent history has called for the stopping of arms sales to Saudi Arabia, and that was Jeremy Corbyn. So Boris was happy, Tories have always been happy to sell arms to Saudi Arabia while they are the biggest exporter of Islamic extremism, yet all the anti-Islamic extremism people voted for him. So I guess that argument's not really that useful anymore because Corbyn's gone, but yeah, I think I definitely want to do more of that in the future. I want to do a lot of I've got a lot of thoughts on Islamophobia because, interestingly enough, I've experienced it myself despite not being a Muslim. But because I'm half Lebanese, 29 by the way, I'm 29. And I'm told I look younger, but hey. I was told that, yeah, as far as Islamophobia goes, because my name is Middle Eastern, despite the fact I'm from a very Christian family, very Catholic, Yeah, quite a few times in my life, I've been properly experienced like Islamophobia. Like the first relationship I ever ended up with, when her family found out that I was with her, they got my name, and she had to spend a whole morning and afternoon answering phone calls from her family to explain to them that I wasn't a Muslim and that I wasn't going to put her in a burqa and stuff like that. So that's one example. So yeah, the reason they call it racism is because it's racialized. Like people fall victim to Islamophobic hate crime for wearing turbans, even though turbans are Sikh, right? I'm probably not going to do a video on Jordan Peterson because he's not that relevant anymore. Like, what's he doing? And everything that needs to be said about him has been said. He doesn't have that much content. He's written 2 books, a bunch of lectures. Like, I don't think there's any. I don't really know about making videos that are not, unless I'm like plugging some holes, you know. Yeah, Lebanese Maronite Christians. Yeah. That's my heritage. So okay, holy shit. Last question. I'm not telling you my name, go away. I've been streaming for 2 hours, my god. Yeah, one more question. What was that guy? Who's that bugger? Where are you? Stop moving! God damn it. Ugh. How do people do this? How do you see COVID affecting political views in the future? It already is. It's already affecting political views. It's more than 2/3 of people in the UK prefer their work at home lifestyle. Like mostly office workers. What's going to happen when they're told to go back when they've been able to do their jobs just fine from home? Which party? Well, Keir Starmer probably won't, but which party is most likely to capitalize on that sentiment? Only facts, please. Thank you so much for the $10. There's a delay. I need to hold off on my super chats until they actually show up on the stream, but it's going to come in a second. But yeah, 2/3 of people prefer working from home. Office work is it's been there's been a lot of discussion on this already from people who basically see office work as useless when it comes to productivity. It can all be done from home. And also the thing with office work is that you've got like, there we go. Thank you for the super chat. Yeah, so that thing with what the hell was I talking about? Offices. Offices are basically, hot take, offices are just a leftover from the Industrial Revolution. That layout, that go in at or from factory labor, just like go in the morning, stay there till like 5 or 6 o'clock, go home, sit there at your station with a boss breathing down your neck for the whole time, and you're sitting there like slipping off, looking at the news or looking at your Facebook. While it's not productive, not any more productive it seems than people working from home, where they can do a bit of work, where they can go for a walk outside their house, then go back in. It's that is something that I really hope. How can you unionize online? Yeah, unionize online. Make your strike a street gathering. I don't know. I mean, yeah, maybe there's a problem there. I don't know. But yeah, the popularity of that is a thing already. That and obviously all this like government intervention in the economy. You know. Who would have thought Tories would do that? Yeah, I think something like this is maybe kind of like the Second World War did in this country, was that because the state effectively became a state-managed economy during the war, people saw the power of the state, like what the state could do, that the state wasn't that bad at organizing these things that were normally trusted to corporations, that they could be efficient, that they could gather everything in this place, at this place, this place at the right time, in this amount of, in this quantity. That states are quite good at doing that. I think COVID is could potentially do the same thing if they're doing a bad job of it now because science denial and shit like that. But yeah, there is definitely some kind of potential there. And I think working from home is a very big part of that, as well as the decline of the service economy. Like, those people are going to have to do something. And I think people who are used to working in offices or banks and places like that and having to go in and, you know, you go there and you have to spend an obscene amount of money on your lunch because you're in the city, and coffee, and you're spending all this money on coffee and all that. Yeah, there's going to be some kind of discussion around that, I hope, and also around the discussion of the fact that if that happens, Amazon would become a monopoly. That would be a problem as well. You'd have to get around what we do there, because I think, didn't Jeff Bezos just recently like make a record amount of money in one day or something? I don't know. I would like to look into that as well, COVID and approaches to work. That's probably, especially worker co-ops. I know Vosh talks a lot about worker co-ops. There are a few bits in that discussion that I think he leaves out that could be beneficial. I'll probably save that for a video, because I'm very overwhelmed by the fact that you're all still here. 184 viewers. Holy shit. Yeah. Zizek did write one thing about changing the world one upvote at a time. There's something in a book that he did on Lenin, Revolution of the Gates, which is, it's kind of shit. It's not a very good book. But there is a bit in there where he thinks that Lenin was sort of predicting, or accidentally predicting, the use of online activism. But I don't know. That's a bit too big brain for this stream, where I am just sitting here off the top of my head reading chat. Favorite Tarkovsky movie? I don't have one, because I don't know who that is. Because I'm ignorant. Okay. Fucking hell. I had fun. Did you guys have fun? There's a delay with chat, so I might not get it right away. Hey, thumbs up. Okay, thank God. I mean, if you all said no, that would be amazing. But okay. Well, am I close to 20K? Yeah, someone suggested I just stay on stream until I get 20,000 subscribers. I'm 29 years old. Oh, shit. Yes, I have read Walter Benjamin. He's amazing. Fascism is the outcome of a failed revolution. People get into fascism when there isn't a left-wing alternative. And about what aesthetics? Didn't he write about how fascism introduces aesthetics to politics? Yeah, I'll put the whole stream up. I'll just put it in next to the main videos. I'm not going to move it like into a VODs thing or anything like that. And I'm definitely not going to try to edit it, because just no. I'll change the thumbnail. The thumbnail is disgusting. It's just me looking confused with chat, probably saying 60 subs. That could take hours, man. No. Favorite philosopher? I don't know. Maybe I'll look at my shelf and see if that answers my question. I guess if Marx was a philosopher, I quite like him. ContraPoints, that's my favorite philosopher. I swear I've learned more from ContraPoints than I have from any of the philosophers I've read, apart from maybe Marx. So there you go. Alan Watts, yeah, he's obviously, because I'm involved in the music, a lot of my friends like him. Yeah, I like some of it, like it's the motivational speech and all that stuff. But yeah, he's probably the only spiritualist speaker that I probably enjoy. I'm not a big that stuff has never really sunk with me, but yeah, I do like some of the stuff he said, especially about the one thing he says, which is, I don't think he means it to be political, but it absolutely is. he said that thing about imagine with students asking what they want to do with their life, and he goes to them, well, what would you want to do if money was no option? And then they would say they want to be writers or they want to be musicians, all that stuff, YouTubers. And then Alan Watts just says, all right, do that. You might be poor, you might find difficulty, you might it might end relationships, all that thing, but that's the only way to you've got one life. Do the thing you want to do. There's obviously political problems with that, which is why I kind of take it as a very accidentally political idea, because like we should be living in a world where people can do that. Like he does make the point that it's not a life unless you're doing the thing you want to be doing. If you have to spend 40 hours in a week in a job that's killing you slowly, and then you get home and you're so tired that all you can do is watch porn and play video games, then not that video games are bad. It's just, I know people who play a lot of games often say that they'd like to do something else if they had the energy for it. So yeah. Terence McKenna, no. Yeah, my friends are really into that. Tell you the thing about these people, like these LSD philosophers, I always associate them. I don't know if you notice this pattern. We're just talking about it with my real life friends before I came on stream, was this weird connection between, like, misogyny doesn't die with spirituality. Like, that's the kind of thing I noticed there, is that, have you ever noticed that there's this kind of weird connection between like spiritualism and like really creepy, like almost like predatorial men? There's a thing there, and I don't know how much of it is how much of that link is inextricable, or whether it can exist without it. I'd need to go further into that. But yeah, Alan Watts is very pleasant to listen to. His the way he speaks is. What do you want to be doing? This. I love doing this. This is awesome. Although I do like writing songs as well, but alas, that career did not take off, and that's fine. It's a private interest. I like doing it. Am I going to start streaming more often? Yeah, probably. I'll probably do video game streams, although the only video game I have installed on my computer right now is World of Warcraft. I don't know how good that is for gaming streams, but... Okay. I've overstayed. There's a bunch of people. I've noticed a few people have left, so I'm definitely calling it here. Stop asking questions. Yes, I play games. Okay, yeah. Right. I love you all. Thank you so much for showing up. I'll probably do more of this. We shall see. Solidarity. Be good. Left is best. Trans rights. Black Lives Matter.